I haven't seen her in a while either, next door to her, so.
That's good.
Yeah, I haven't seen her since.
It's cold, you just don't go out anymore.
Good for them. Now we're gonna wait till it's -20, and then 3 minutes. Really want to be outside.
I don't have, oh, that's good. Taylor. Hi, how's it going? Yeah. Hey, how are you, lady?
Your family.
Oh. So Fred's like, I said, "Will you been hanging out?" Vicky and I were in duo. I was like, "Oh, that's good."
You can't put your jealous.
And Fred's like, "It was so nice that she let us take her car." And he's like, "I wouldn't want her driving all this way by herself. Even if it was our car, she would have been with us."
I got he's such a good driver, but I got him because there's not going because I always drive.
Yeah.
It's not going home. He put it on the DQ cruise so it
Oh,
stays with the
so
same
it- yeah.
person. And it's like, God, darn, you can drive.
Right.
I should know it because there's a symbol in there. It's
Yeah,
on.
but
I
probably-
looked
yeah,
at it.
probably didn't.
But I don't put it on because I don't like it. But he is such a good driver. I felt bad that he had to drive.
He said you guys had a good weekend.
We did.
He said the boys had a lot of fun.
Yep.
And I said, "Well, that's good."
I brought George's keys on too.
Okay, I'm gonna get started. I'm Kim Taylor. I'm the district administrator. So there's 4 of you, so I'll try to, speak to all 4 of you at the same time. I just wanted to make sure everybody knows who's here tonight. Tonight really is just about helping you understand more about the capital referendum, what we're asking for, what the need is, and that impact. So again, I'm Kim Taylor. This is Jim Weedy. He's from PSI. And I'm sorry, I don't have your name up there, Alex. Alex is also from PSI. They are the company that did our facilities study. Jordan Mestica is here from Baird, and he helps us a lot with financial forecasts. Brian Hopkins and Mike Gentile and Amy, I didn't know was going to be here, and Vicki, our board members are here, and Joe in the back, sorry, are here. So their names aren't here, aren't on here, and Angie, our SPED director, is here. So we're going to I'm going to review some things with you, our 3-year strategic plan, the facility study. Jim's going to talk a little bit about what are the challenges, so the needs we have. I'm going to take you through how we went through this process. Jordan's going to talk a little bit about the financial piece and give you some voting information. And then if you have further questions, everybody's at a different table, so you can go and just talk to the people that you have questions for. So I wanted to start with how we started the process sort of last spring. We started to invite the community, and when I say community, I'm talking about families, the broader community, staff, and our kids. And we wanted to talk about what are the things you love about Riverview and what are things that you want to see happening in the future. So it was a strategic planning process, and we started with what are the things that we're doing really well, and most notable is probably our achievement. We're exceeds expectations on the state report card, 12th in the state for K-8 schools, so we're doing some good things. Our on track to graduation rates also exceed the state average. So that was noted by our constituents. And then we talked about, well, what else besides achieving is happening? And the community really talked about the dedicated staff and teachers we have here. We have long-term tenured teachers. We have a lot of teachers over 30 years that have been teaching here, also over 20 years. That's kind of a unicorn in the school system. So a lot about that. The community also talked about the importance of small class sizes. So that gave us information, right? Like in order to save money, we don't want to have bigger class sizes, and the amount of student support that we offered. They also talked about, again, the student performance and the amount of community engagement we have. So those were all the strengths that we pulled out. After having 4 sessions, we came together, we brought together the entire community, and we added to our mission and included the words empower and embrace along with educate. So how are we empowering kids? How are we embracing their differences and educating them for a lifetime of success? That's where we sort of landed. During that process, we also sorted out what are our priorities, because we have to have priorities in order to move forward. And so we came up with 4 buckets, and tonight we're really going to talk about the safety and facility upgrades that are necessary that came out of those meetings. That are necessary in order to maintain the integrity of the building, but also to maintain safety and to maintain the learning environment. And so at the same time that we were doing the strategic planning, we started to engage with PSI, with Performance Services. Jim Weedy came in and they did a facility study in order to inform the community about, okay, what are our needs for the next year, which is really critical. What are the needs for the next 5 years and next 10 years? So I'm going to let Jim talk a little bit about that.
Thanks, Kim. Again, Jim Weedy with Performance Services. I'm here with Alex Lopez, our senior architect. A little history, we've been working with Kim for a little over a year in the district. Our team of mechanical engineers and architects walked the building with their maintenance crew and looked at every inch of the building. We came back with a report that showed the needs of the district. We then were able to funnel those needs into the most critical needs. The report said, you know, this can wait 20 years, 10 years, but then we focused on really what the critical needs were. They fell into 3 buckets, which were safety and security, academic learning spaces, and addressing the maintenance and aging infrastructure, the old pieces of equipment. I'm not going to go through each one of these, but after this is done, Alex and I are here. We have boards, we have information. Please just come up and talk to us. We have to answer any questions.
Yeah, so that's sort of thinking about why a capital referendum, and I don't know where all of you are in understanding what a capital referendum is and an operating referendum. Certainly before I was a district administrator, I had no clue. There's 2 kinds of referendums that schools can ask for funding for. One is an operating referendum, and that's asking for the taxpayers to consider funding the daily operations of a school. How do you keep your lights on, salaries, healthcare, those kinds of things. That's because that comes out of something called Fund 10 or General Fund. Then there's a capital referendum, which is what we're moving forward with right now. A capital referendum seeks approval from the voters to be able to fund larger scale projects that are sometimes one-time capital improvements, like our vestibule, or ongoing building renovations and large-scale purchases like a roof. So this, the capital referendum question that will appear on the April 1st ballot is for $7 billion to fund the capital things that we need, not our daily operations. So after we did the strategic plan, we had the facility study done, and we realized where we were and the needs, the critical needs that we have with our roofs, our boiler systems, some of the safety things that are necessary to continue to provide a safe and secure environment for our school. Then the question was, how are we going to fund it? So the challenge became, how are we going to get these funds from our general operating budget to address the needs? And really what the legislators say is, if you want to do that, the way you do that is ask your taxpayers. That's the model we have in our state. So we took that challenge statement and we said, okay, well, what are the focus areas? We came up with 3 buckets. We want to improve safety and security, right? And in that bucket includes that entrance, includes fencing to divide our property from the railroad tracks. It includes a crisis alert system where teachers wear a badge and can press a button a number of times that alerts the police immediately and puts the school into lockdown should we need that. And the second bucket is renovating classrooms and support areas. So that bucket really has things like updating our furniture that hasn't been updated in 30 years, updating our science lab. One of the things we heard in the strategic planning session is that the teachers at the high school and the kids said that they weren't as prepared for science classes because we don't have a working science lab. So they're not doing the experiments and the hardcore science There's soft science, you can learn about the solar system, but they're not doing the experiments and the hands-on learning that could be happening if we had renovated spaces. And then updating our campus and infrastructure, I've talked about a few of those things like our roof, our boilers, changing out the lights to become LED lights to save us money in the long run. So why did we decide to come now? Is because one of the things that we learned from the facility studies, our custodial staff has done a great job of keeping up our building and really have found ways, like the MacGyver ways to figure out how to make things work. But many of our mechanicals are at the end of their life, so we need to start replacing them. The safety and security obviously are always top of mind, and we want to make sure that our playgrounds and things are ADA compliant so that all kids can access it in the community. And then looking at our learning spaces and then looking at our strategic plan and the values that the community said they value, like collaboration. How do we put things in our environment that encourage collaboration, communication, and the things that the community said. And then once again, our operating dollars just are not enough to be able to fund some of these large scale capital items. I'm just going to give you a few details about the, besides the strategic planning, what we did, and then I'm going to have Jordan talk about some of the financials. After we spent time with the community, we looked at the facilities plan, like I said, and then we started talking with the board about what are our next steps, how are we going to fund some of these things. And so at that point, we decided to go to the survey to survey the community to see if there was an appetite for helping us fund these things. I don't know if you received the survey in the mail or not, but we sent out the survey. We used a company to send out the survey so that it would be valid. And we got the survey results back. We presented it to the board, and we looked at the definitely yes and probably yes. And they have a system for weighting it so that, because generally families and staff are going to rate it high, right? Probably yes or yes. But they weight it to as well around the community members and different demographics. At the end of the day, the survey told us that we had about 60% of voters say that they would vote for. So the board decided that they would move forward, created a resolution that we would put the question on the ballot for $7 million, and that's where we are today. Let the voters decide on April 1st if we are going to be able to move forward. I've already talked about this capital referendum being the only way that we can fund large-scale projects. It is the only way that it allows us to secure enough money, to borrow enough money for 20 years to be able to fund the projects. The other thing, when I share the ballot question to know, is that only the things that we ask for are the only things that we can do. So it's not like all of a sudden we can start using the $7 million to fund other things. But the on the ballot question tells the taxpayers this is where your money is going. It should be noted that it's been 28 years since the last community-supported capital referendum, which goes to the incredible fiscal conservatism that's been happening in this district. Over 80% of districts have gone to referendum in the recent, probably 3 years. Many are going for operating referendum, but it's been 28 years since we've asked for any money towards a capital campaign. One of the questions that comes up frequently and should come up frequently is what have we done to address the lack of funding? So in the last 2 years, these are just some of the cuts we've made. We've cut some staff positions. We did cut summer school for 1 year. We brought it back because the community said, no, we don't want you to cut that. We've audited our staffing plan. We've received and applied for grants. We've cut substitute teacher costs. We did have to patch the roof because it was leaking, so we had to do something in the interim before being able to replace the whole thing. So we have looked at ways to save money. Again, none of these things alone would allow us to not come to referendum or not be able to fund the $7 million projects. This is what's going to appear on the ballot. So this is the exact question. You can see the amount is in the question. It tells you the things that we're funding. It also has our name in there because sometimes people get mixed up with joint school district number 1. It's a very long name. That's our legal name, and we also put Riverview School. So that's how it's going to appear exactly on the ballot. We will be publishing this more as we get closer to April 1. So Jordan's going to talk a little bit about the financial impact and just the state of Wisconsin in general for school districts.
Yeah, so as Kim said, I'm going to talk about the financial impact for this referendum, but first I thought I would provide a little more context into what Kim said regarding this district and districts around the state not being able to pay for these types of upgrades out of their operating budget. So this chart here was provided, the data was provided by the Legislative Fiscal Bureau, the Wisconsin Legislative Fiscal Bureau. And what it's showing that since Act 10, when collective bargaining went away in the 2013 school year, part of the update at that time was also to no longer fund schools to increase on an annual basis to tie it to inflation, right? So at that time, any annual increases in budgets were tied to the biennial budget that the governor would propose and the state would approve. So since Act 10, this line shows the deficit relative to inflation that schools are funded on a per pupil basis and a per student basis. So as of last year, it was $2,300 per student that schools were behind relative to inflation. So this is the reason why you're seeing such an increase across the state for operating referendums and facility referendums. Because as budgets get tighter and tighter, one of the first things districts cut is their maintenance budget, right? It's the things that they would normally allot to make upgrades to the building. That's the easiest thing to do because the primary focus is educating students. You need to have teachers to do that. So along those lines, as I said, the state limits what a district can receive in revenue in order to operate the district. It's made up of the taxes and the state aid provided by the state. So this is the district's levy for the current school year. So just under $2.7 million in taxes to fund the operations of the district. Many districts also have a community service levy. This district has not had a community service levy in 10 years now. And then referendum approved debt. The majority of school districts do have debt outstanding and do levy for it. I believe around 75% of districts. Your district has not had a referendum debt levy over the past 8 years. So when we speak in terms of what the levy means for taxpayers, we speak about it in terms of mill rate. The mill rate is simply the levy on per $1,000 of property valuation. So the district's levy of $2.7 million divided by the total valuation within the district of $640 million, and then on a per $1,000 basis gets a mill rate of $4.20 per $1,000 in property valuation, or $420 per $100,000 full valuation. So just be clear, this is for the K-8 portion only, right? So when you're looking at your property tax bill, you obviously have the high school portion, your municipal portion, county, and your tech college as well. So this is just the K-8 portion and the only portion that the district can. So here's the district's mill rate over the last 10 years. You can see a pretty compelling downward trend. And this is true across the state for a couple of reasons. I just stated that revenues were not increasing proportionally relative to inflation. And then home valuations have increased dramatically recently, right? So if your revenues aren't increasing, but the denominator, your valuation is increasing, it's going to bring down your mill rate. The district's actual levy this past year was actually a pretty minor increase, only 1.8%. And much of that was offset by the increase in the school levy tax credit. So I'm assuming as you look at your tax bills, the K-8 portion was probably relatively flat year over year this past year. So this shows where you stack up relative to your neighbors in the area. Obviously, you're on the lower end. We do have a couple districts here that are lower. This is just very high property valuation for these districts. Paris, I know, is considering going to referendum in the next couple of years for their facility upgrades, but they have a lot of property valuation that is coming on just along 94 there. Lake Geneva area, J4, obviously huge property valuation there. But Silver Lake is right around the state average in terms of mill rate for K-8 this year. So the tax impact for this $7 million capital referendum, we're projecting at 55 cents on the mill rate, or $55 per $100,000 in property valuation. Some of the assumptions going into this, we are assuming that the district would issue debt to finance this and repay it over 20 years at a rate of 5.25%. So that is conservative. If we were to issue this debt today, it would probably be closer to 4.5%. But not knowing where rates are going to go over the next 6 months, we've been projecting this for probably close to a year now. So we wanted some flexibility in there. And we're assuming a growth rate of valuation of only 2%. The district has been growing dramatically higher than that in recent history. As I said, one of the main inputs is that interest rate that we're using. Just want to provide some context. So the larger portion here is the past 30 years of an index that we use for municipal bonds. So if it's successful, the district would issue tax-exempt municipal bonds. This is just an index for that, but it does show a pretty compelling downward trend over the last 30 years. It did tick up after we were getting out of the pandemic. We knew that would happen. This is historically low interest rates. We were issuing 20-year bonds for under 2%. We knew that wasn't going to be sustainable. So it did correct, but the good news is we're still in a very good, historically good interest rate environment relative to the past 30 years. And even if you go back further, that trend actually goes higher. So Kim noted earlier that facility referendums like this, the state has decided that when your needs become this large, this is how you fulfill the need. You have to go to your community and ask for their approval. So this shows that over the last 20 years, 85% of districts around the state have gone for a facility referendum, and 81% have been successful. Silver Lake is this really tiny white dot right there. It is white, it's not blue. But just to give some context that this is the normal process for facility upgrades.
Okay, just as we're kind of wrapping up things, right? As we're kind of wrapping up, just sharing with you the project timeline. It's been, as Jordan and Jim said, a year of working together, making sure that we were thorough with the facilities. We looked at the needs, what's critical, what do we really have to ask for. We wanted to be, the board decided that they wanted to be as conservative as possible and as modest as possible. So we did board workshops, had PSI in to do the facility study. We looked at the surveys, shared results with people on the website, but also our internal staff. Eventually, we got to the resolution being approved, and here we are now is in the public information sessions. So sharing it publicly, we have it on our website. Obviously, we're doing social media posts and trying to get people to understand the facts behind it. So lastly, just sharing, it's on, again, on the April 1, 2025 ballot. You can vote at the Wilmot Fire Station, Silver Lake Village Hall, or the Salem Lakes Village Hall, 7 a.m. till 8. But also there's the absentee voter the absentee voting starts earlier than that. If you want more information, one place to go is our website. There is a tab called Referendum, and there's a whole page that has frequently asked questions, it has videos, it also has all of our press releases. But if you have questions, and I'm sure all of you do have questions, or additional information you want, that's what everybody, at the different tables are for. So I would encourage you to ask away, because we really want everybody to be as informed as possible. So thank you for coming tonight. I appreciate you guys coming out in the cold weather. It's not for the light of heart. So ask away. Jim and Alex are available. You're staying around, Amy and Mike. The board can help. Angie can talk to you about academics if you want to talk more about academics, or if you have other financial questions, Jordan's available too. So thank you.
I don't know where to start.
Can we just talk as a group? I think if we have a smaller group or something, a question, maybe the next person.
Well,
Yeah.
I would like to say, I don't think your voting places are accurate, because if it's not a general election, you cannot vote at the Silver Lake Village Hall. We have to go to Salem.
No, it will be in
Yeah,
April.
It will be?
I
In
reached
April,
out to
it'll
them.
be all three of those, so
Yeah.
whichever of your
Really?
polling
That is gonna be
place will be.
so confusing,
Yeah, I
because we've
reached
been
out.
told unless it's a general election, we have to vote in Salem.
Oh, that it,
April is.
April is a general
Yeah.
election.
Primaries.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
I reached out to them because I wasn't sure myself, and that's.
Yeah, because there's been times that we go to the Village Hall and then we're told, no, you gotta go over to
Yeah.
Salem, so it's like,
Which do I go to?
So I have one big question, and I know I've had a couple staff members reach out to me. I mean, I have lots of children go through here. Where did the 7 million come from? I am a numbers person. I served on the PTO board as treasurer for many, many years. The 7 million, when you list out what you want to do, it doesn't compute to me. And I know when you said you wanted to do conservatively, I'm not coming up with 7 million. So I want to know where that number came from. Because I'm all for funding our schools. I really am. It just 7 million is like, okay, where?
Yeah, and we can talk about that. So our company, all we do is K through 12 schools. So that's the only work we do. So our estimators, these are jobs we've done in the last 2 to 3 years that we have real pricing on. The roofs is a big number for this, because they do it to replace the secured entrances. We had a list that I think came up to 15. We narrowed that down. If you want to see more detail, those
Yeah, that's what I'm really interested in, the line item, because I know if it's not spent where it's supposed to be spent, it then gets returned to the taxpayers.
So I have line items, that you can see, but 54% of the 7 million is going to facilities and maintenance. So that's the asphalt, that's the roof, that's the boilers. 27% is for safety, that's redoing that front vestibule, the crisis alert system, the fencing, those kinds of things. And then 16% is the classroom furniture and science lab. So that's sort of how the percentages break down. So facilities and maintenance is 3.8 million, safety 1.9, and classroom updates 1.1 million.
Okay.
So, yep, $7 million, I know, it sounds like a lot, and, the roof
Yeah,
is $1 million itself. And the playground equipment is, if we do both playgrounds, $1 million in itself. The things are, furniture is expensive, the science lab, putting in running water and hood and those kinds of things, it adds up very quickly.
I don't want to interject too much here, but just speaking specifically to the roofing work that needs to be done, that number is a very affordable number based on most projects of the same scope and size.
Is it the whole roof or is it just
Yeah,
parts?
that's what I was wondering too. Because when you read it, it says parts of the roof. And I'm like, why are we replacing parts? So that way, in another 5 years, we're asking for another referendum to replace the other parts. So is it the whole thing or parts?
certain sections need to be completely replaced, other sections, Usually they're staggered, right? We're gonna talk about that.
So, yes, it's an excellent question. So a lot of your roofs are under warranty.
Oh.
And so there are different ages. Replacing the ones that are definitely shot at and out of warranty. So you don't want to replace something that is obviously still viable and still under warranty. So that's the main answer to the question. There's also obviously the different roofs have different ages, so they're just aging separately. And in order to save money, we're choosing not to replace the entire roof to save money. Going back to your question, I just like to add, we've got an entire team of estimators, and they do this every day in and day out. So we've got really fresh numbers on what things cost. And so those are assigned based on the potential projects that were in the assessment. And obviously, your Board of Education has pared those down, and we've included budgets for those numbers and pretty much everything.
I mean, I had a big concern because the referendum, the last one failed, which boggles my mind how it failed, because it was literally 7 votes. If 4 people would have changed their mind, it would have passed for operational. So when we saw this, I'm like, okay, so what's to say that another operational referendum is not gonna come up in 2 years?
A very good question. So, a couple of things. One is we have a fund balance, and so fund balance is like a savings. Although it's not exactly a savings, hey, Jordan, but I still equate it to a savings.
It's still allocated.
Yeah,
I get
so
it, yeah.
our board decided, so we were at 30%. Our policy said we had to have 30% fund balance. We reduced that to 25%, so that we could dip into that. 25% is still a high number. Really, what you're trying to do with your fund balance is avoid short-term borrowing, because when you short-term borrow, you pay interest on it. So you would short-term borrow for things like payroll. So 25% is still pretty healthy, and it's nice to have a savings for when something that we didn't know was going to goes, right? Okay, so we lowered that so that we could dip into it more for operational costs. The other thing that's happening is the biennial budget is coming up, and the board felt that it was not the time to ask for operational, not knowing what the biennial budget would do. If the biennial budget increases our funding, so one of the things that is being lobbied for is an increase in special ed funding. If that could increase our operational budget by $400,000 a year, right? Well, that puts us in a very different place. So we don't want to ask for operational too early. That's not to say that we may not have to ask for operational. If there's no increase and that number gets wider and the gap gets bigger, then it goes back to the community again. Like, you don't want bigger class sizes. What are we going to give here, right? And so I think it's not off the table, but it was too early for the board to ask, and I think it would have been negligent for us to go and ask for operation right now. We've made some cuts. We are in deficit, so we are pulling from our fund balance, but we're hoping that the increases from the state will help offset that.
And one of the slides, it said that Fund 46 was created. What is Fund 46?
Great question, but I think you tell. Fund 46 is the fund that allows districts to save for capital things. So once you start Fund 46, which we just passed that resolution, you cannot touch that money for 5 years. So we start putting money into that to start saving for when we have other things that we need to go for.
This wasn't one of my questions, it was one of another community member's question. Fund 80, do you have one? Is that something to be looked at? Because one of the things that they were talking about is, as a community, there's not a lot of events happening for the kids and the community members. So is that something that?
Yep, so I am bringing that to the board probably, I don't know, maybe in the next 4 months. There are only certain things you can use Fund 80 for. And you want to make sure that, you know, you're complying with all the laws. So I just had that conversation with 2 business managers, and it's on the radar to begin the Fund 80. But the board would not decide that until our annual meeting in October. So that is definitely part of the plan.
So just to add on to that, that was part of that slide that I showed about the district's current levy. That Fund 80 is that community service levy. That was 0.
Right.
Yeah, the district hasn't had a levy for that in 10 years. But it is pretty strict in what you can use it for. It has to be to a general community purpose. So it obviously doesn't assist with any of these facility owners. And it is an additional tax.
It can be. It can also be funded somewhat out of Fund 10.
So Fund 10 is the general fund.
Right.
So you wouldn't use Fund $10 for a Fund 80 purpose. That's the advantage of doing Fund 80 is that it is an additional tax because it's serving the community. It's not taking away your general operational funds.
Okay. With I know it's like Act 10 was being decided upon in the upper courts, and I know some of it was being repealed. So is that why we're waiting for an operational?
No, that didn't really play into the decision. I mean, I don't know if you guys want to speak to that, but it really, I'll speak and then you guys add on to. The board really decided that it would be, again, negligent to ask for operating referendum when we don't know what the biennial budget's gonna give to us. And we do have a savings, right? So we did not, it's like if at your home, if you have a $50,000 savings, how you can dip into it a little bit to get some of your needs met instead of taking out a loan. Right. And so I think, do you want to say anything else to
I
it?
think when we talked about it, right, our current fund balance is 32 or 33%.
Right.
So we're still healthy even going to 30, and that's why we chose to go to 25 to allow us the breathing room to see what the governor does, what the state does from the budget perspective before we just go ask for money. And I think if I'm being honest, obviously as I know the last time we went for operational, we may have jumped the gun in that year because we didn't wait for the budget to come out, and I think we learned from that, to be honest with you, Chris.
Okay.
So part of it was, trial and error, for lack of a better way of saying it, because I don't know had that referendum passed that it would be great, we'd have been in a little bit better place, but we'd still be in the same place from this facility standpoint.
Right, and then we would have 2 referendums. That's what I think a lot of people are concerned about because they knew the operational budget and so many voted for it. I mean, it failed by such little margin.
Most of us went to bed thinking it passed. And
Exactly.
Woke up surprised.
And we were, like, all right, okay, we can keep all of our teachers, we can, keep our, class sizes, and then it was like, oh, okay. So then when this one came up, I'm like, wait a minute, we're not going for an operational budget again? Why?
The thing is, it's tricky, right, because it's volatile a little bit, and so you're, it's a waiting game. And I think right now, we work really closely with Baird, and right now we're pretty set for the next 2 or 3 years not to be below the 25%.
So Kim does a really good job of using a budget forecast model that projects out the next 5 years. And using conservative assumptions going forward, it just showed that the district wasn't at a need to go to operational referendum right now. But like every other district around the state, you are beholden to the biennial budget. 2 years ago, the budget did provide for a sizable increase for this district for operations. So the district was considered a low revenue district, meaning of all the districts around the state, they get minimum amount per pupil.
Right. But I mean, we've also lost, for when my kids were here, we've lost a few hundred students. And not because people are moving out, it's just the way, obviously, I don't have 4 kids here anymore. So they're, it's just weird that it's, hey, I get the building needs, that, but the interest rate, will it be fixed or will it be an arm?
Yeah, it would be fixed once the debt is issued. School districts can only have fixed rate debt.
That's good to know. And will it definitely be over 20 years?
That's what we're projecting right now. If interest rates come in a lot lower, you could pay it off sooner.
But we can't go for more.
You cannot go over 20 years.
Okay.
No, that's the statutory maximum for a debt issuance. We do work with districts that it's a larger amount, and we might phase it out, debt issuance over numerous years so that you get a 22, 23-year total repayment. Each issue can go 10 years. But this, at $7 million, would be one issue over 20 years maximum.
If or when the referendum passes, when would the construction start?
Good question. So, I think we've talked a little bit about starting some things in the summer. It really depends on the bids that come in, the timing of the bids, right? And how much time things are gonna take, right? Because, you only have a finite amount of time for, before school starts. I would say we need to get going right away on the roof and, boilers. Is that your, any other?
Yeah, I mean, this is what we do, again, we only work with schools, so we know the time constraints of kids go back to school, you gotta get things done. We would hope to get the lighting done so we can start with that energy savings right away. And the rebates that you get from the lighting, so you get that right away. Some things need more design work than others, some of the mechanical portions and some of the mechanical equipment has a longer lead time than others. But we would start April 2nd.
Part of that
I was
too
hoping
is
to take
being,
vacation in a second.
Fiscally responsible with your tax dollars, meaning even if the drawings are done, it may not be the right bid environment at the time, so we definitely want competition. Those dollars can go a little bit further, and we may slow some things down for that reason, to try to save money.
Would we go back to using the same, like shared construction, did our, I don't know, the last several, I can't even tell you how many building improvements we've done since I've been here.
They were the Nexus project, right? That was the last big one.
Yeah, so we would, we welcome, first of all, we talk to the board and the community and welcome local subs, right? And that's what we want to get. We bid out every single piece of the project. So whether it's general construction or equipment or mechanical or plumbing, electrical, we try to get 3 or 4 bids from each component. So they would be more than welcome to help bid it at GC. But there'd be many others. We want to make sure we get everybody that's involved in the community on the good shape.
Other questions? We had one person come in.
How was that work?
Okay, you're here. It was cold. I think that probably turned people off. So I'm hoping the next one is maybe more individual, but it was a person that had a lot of really great questions, and it was very positive. Yeah.
I have a question. What does the security for the front look like? My kids are going to be attending this upcoming school year, and a couple things really bothered me, and it was security, and then also seeing some of the teachers posting that their rooms are 62 degrees. And personally, I don't want my kids sitting in a room that's 62 degrees. And if I had kids who were here now and I found that out, I would be pretty, upset about that. So I guess I'm assuming that's going to be addressed very soon. But what does security at the front look like? Is that the only door that people can get into when school's in session?
Yes.
Okay.
And so, go ahead, Jim, or Alex. Or I mean, I can speak to it, but
Yeah, I think so it's a good question. The idea is to, number one, have an identifiable entrance that most people use. And obviously, have camera access, card access, and the secure entry concept is essentially letting somebody bust in. It doesn't really start at the door, it actually starts in the parking lot, so folks can see who's coming in, who get checked in. The interior vestibule door will be locked at all times.
Okay.
And so you have to get into that, excuse the term, parent trap is what I call it, before, and so you're visually identified, and then you have access into the office area,
Okay.
which is a secondary place of holding a person that is normally not in the school. And then obviously somebody, an administrator or a teacher, whoever will then meet you and let you move around the school or the process. For example, some of the work that we're looking at is pulling the nurse's office closer and having everything in that front office be a little bit more accessible and away and more centralized towards the entrance. Again, all this to aid in security. It's visual, it's card access, and so all of those things work together, starting from when you're walking in or parking.
Is that still going to be the main entrance? Because coming here today, I've never been in the school before. I didn't know where to go. I was like driving around back there. I'm like, oh, there's no cars over there.
There's some drawings here that will show kind of the change in the focus. So it's
Okay.
clearly defined, because that's a message we
Yeah.
heard loud and clear from a
Yeah.
lot of community members, is that unless you've been here before, and even me, I've been a school board member for 10 years now. Been involved in school for a lot longer than that. I was told this week, I was coming to help with the cheer competition, I was told by the staff member in charge, just come to door one, it'll be unlocked. And I said, you gotta tell me what door one is.
Right.
I've been here for 20 years, so, with the change in that, it'll be clearly defined, there'll be that canopy out there, so people will know that this is the main entrance. And I think the other drawing that they have down there, if you wanna come look at it, you'll be able to see some of the changes they're making from a security standpoint, or they're recommending from a security standpoint.
Now, does that also work for other doors? How easy would it be for somebody to break into the doors?
You can't get into any.
Okay.
That's the one thing I will say right now, you can't get into any other doors. but-
Okay.
And that was changed maybe 10, 15 years ago, because we had an issue that the doors were not locking,
Okay.
and they changed that. Yes, go ahead, kids here, because
I mean, it's
the
sad that
first
we have
grade
to talk
hallway,
about that stuff.
it's now
but-
locked, you can't get in it.
Yeah.
You can't get in the building unless it's an event where specific
Okay.
doors are unlocked. Otherwise, during the day, the only place you're getting in is that door.
Yeah, I didn't know that was the main entrance until I was like at the steps and seeing the little writing.
So just to answer the second part of
Yeah.
your question, which is really important that folks understand, is we're looking at, I'm gonna try to get towards the stone here, because I have a question on 146 and how that's gonna work. So I'll back into an answer to your question. Okay? So essentially, the facilities assessment that we did for the entire school took a look at everything. And there's an absurd number of things that the cost of this, right? And just like your home, just like your car, things do not last forever. Things like roofing, HVAC, flooring, furniture, they all have a useful service life. And we've got over 300 school district clients, and you guys are all in the same situation, right? There's only enough money to go around. And so what happens is having a plan and a way to fund it, and understanding that in 5 or 6 years, rooftop unit number 27 is going to fail. Okay, and having that ability for your board of education to understand that in 3, 4, 5 years they have to fund this makes a lot of sense, and that's actually the main reason for that facility assessment. I think your $7 million worth of projects that are, call it the first out of the gate, is just that first out of the gate. Now, going back to your temperature, a lot of the rooftop units have reached their useful service life, and so we have identified those that are critical. Those are going to be replaced, but most importantly is the controls, right? Your thermostat at home. That's the in a commercial environment, it's actually one of the toughest things to dial in, because there are so many rooftop units, so many rooms, so many things that need to happen on the engineering side in order for you to be comfortable in your room, and you to be comfortable in your room. The controls are actually a huge part of it. And so that is part of the first projects out of the gate. And so security and comfort are something that we're looking at it right now. So
Thank you.
that's
Yep,
what-
yep, thank you.
And it's fair to say that is exclusively out of necessity.
Oh, yeah.
Because we can't continue with this.
Absolutely. I think the one thing I would add is there really isn't anything in our opinion that's dealing with it. I think all of this stuff is really important to have your building continue to function as it has been.
Well, right now you can't find parts for your controls. It's like having a really old computer, like a really old one, and you have someone trying to fix it. You can't fix it. But like Kim said, you guys have done such a great job keeping this building where it is. But at some point, it just becomes, the controls especially, you have to, they can't find parts.
So trying to find parts for a 1947 Oldsmobile,
Yeah.
they're not out there anymore. And the reality of the situation is specifically with the boilers and the controls, which is the heat, why we're all in here freezing. They're not just reaching their service lives, they are past their service lives. And that is a testament to the custodial staff, maintenance staff here to be able to extend the service life of these products well beyond what their operational effectiveness is supposed to be. But it's gotten to a point where there is just no way to continue that without completely replacing them and updating those control units.
That definitely why I'm waiting.
He's like, my wife's got it. If you, I mean, how many times have you seen him?
Okay, one more question.
Sure.
So it's 7 million. Let's say all the updates will take, what, next 3 to 5 years?
I would say 2
No,
years.
no. Yeah.
Very quick.
I mean, yeah, if we can't, we'll get as much done this summer, and the rest we'll have to.
Okay, yeah. I'm just thinking of the prices increasing in products, steel,
We factored that.
all
That's a
that
good
good stuff.
question. There's an escalation in the numbers.
Okay. So that was really.
So it's probably gonna come in less.
Yes.
The numbers- the
There's a
numbers
strong
are very
potential that it could
conservative.
come in less. It depends on the inflation rate of all these
It's also
issues.
conservative, and it changes. I've seen escalation go at 3% a year and as high as 7% a year. You really don't want to know what COVID is. COVID, I saw numbers at 15%. And you could attest to that.
Absolutely.
That's,
In some cases higher than that.
But yes, with the tariffs right now, we're scared of the tariffs. That's a really good question today. That's what you're getting at.
Yeah.
We're looking at numbers right now with steel and aluminum being a little wonky, but I think that's going to settle down a little bit.
I would second that. So I specialize in metal buildings and steel manufacturing, and although since COVID it has been extremely volatile, both up and down, it has started to trend to a more steady cost, and it's a declining cost. And all of my manufacturers estimate that the steel cost in the next year to 2 years will drop to a much more conservative number from what they have been, much closer to pre-COVID numbers.
I deal with steel mills, and they're getting their prices back up right now.
It depends on what type of steel we're talking about. 'Cause
And
there's
aluminum has jumped.
Aluminum's a little bit different, but raw steel, it's a little bit of difference. And you're gonna see some other impacts too, just based on what's going on in the government with policy and tariffs. And there's a lot of Chinese steel, and you're gonna start seeing a lot more American-made steel.
That's a really good point. We've got plenty of ore in this country to be able to provide that. I think it's just, it's politics.
But it, just like the 2 years kind of makes me comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. We're gonna try to get as much done as possible, and quite frankly, it's usually the decisions that need to be made on your end that will slow us down, in a nutshell. But we'll work as fast as we must.
We're looking at that.
Any other questions we can answer?
Do you guys have any handouts, like to take home?
So you take as many as you want to eat. Do you want a few? Just one. Okay. Do you guys want one?
I have one.
You did?
Yeah, I have one name already.
Okay. All right, thanks for coming and, we're still around if you have other questions.
I got one more question.
Oh. You don't want just that, but I don't want to do it anyway.
Yeah,
Okay.
chicken,
Probably.
probably.
Yeah, probably.
I didn't pick
I mean,
her
I
up.
know there's summer people.
I know, I didn't pick her up. I'm ready. You have my keys?
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, nice meeting you.
Now, are these orders gonna be special, people breaking it?
Yeah,
That's
they'll-
your question, like,
they'll-
if one of you guys were breaking it versus me, I don't know what I could do.
Yeah, eventually. But so. Okay. You keep the ball patterns. Yeah. And as you know, that's been a little more.
Right, yeah, but it's.
I actually saw it. But in the business, raw steel business, where you're talking about actual steel buildings and steel manufacturing, which is what a lot of
This is not such.
the roof is, depends how much extra schools and the actual it's all flat roofs. And so what we have right now is a combination of metal.
Really appreciate it.
The other one is EPDM, which is fully integrated over the top. Insulation. This goes exactly insulation.